Commander Jack Morris stood at the observation deck, staring at the massive alien ship that dwarfed their own vessel. The stars glittered beyond the transparent hull, but his attention remained fixed on the approaching shuttle. After decades of searching the stars, humanity had finally made contact with the Galactic Confederation, a coalition of 17 spacefaring species that had been watching Earth for centuries. "Ready for this?" asked Science Officer Lisa Grant, smoothing her uniform as she joined him at the viewport. Morris nodded, though his tight jaw betrayed his tension. As ready as anyone can be for humanity's debut on the galactic stage. The shuttle docked with a gentle hiss, and Morris led the small welcoming party to the airlock. The inner door slid open, revealing 3 aliens of different species. The tallest, a bluish humanoid with 4 arms and silver eyes, stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Krell of the Vexari," it said, the universal translator converting its musical tones to English. "We welcome the children of Earth to the greater universe." Children. Morris caught the condescension immediately, but maintained his diplomatic smile. "Thank you, Ambassador. We're honored to represent humanity in this historic meeting." The delegation proceeded to the conference room, where holographic displays showed the various member worlds of the Confederation. As drinks were served, Morris noticed the sidelong glances and subtle gestures between the aliens, the universal language of amusement at someone else's expense. "Your propulsion system is quite quaint," remarked a reptilian delegate, examining the schematics of Earth's most advanced fusion drive. "Still bound to 3-dimensional space travel." "We're still learning," Grant replied evenly, though Morris saw her fingers tighten around her davad. Ambassador Krell gestured grandly. "Perhaps you would care to tour our vessel. It might provide inspiration for your engineers." The tour was clearly designed to impress and intimidate. The Vexari ship utilized what they called 5th-dimensional folding to traverse vast distances. Morris watched as Krell demonstrated by sending a small probe through what appeared to be a ripple in space, only for it to instantly reappear kilometers away. Most younger species require centuries after first contact to grasp even basic dimensional mechanics, Krell said, not bothering to hide his smug tone. The Noldarians still struggle with 4th-dimensional concepts after 800 years. A small furry delegate bristled at this but said nothing. "How fascinating," Morris replied diplomatically. "We're eager students." The laughter that followed was polite but unmistakable in its meaning. Earth was being welcomed as one might welcome an amusing pet, with patronizing affection rather than respect. During the formal dinner that evening, the conversation turned to defense technologies. When Morris mentioned Earth's particle beam weapons, several delegates exchanged amused glances. "Particles," chuckled a crystalline being. "How delightfully primitive." Grant's communicator vibrated subtly. She checked it under the table, then caught Morris's eye with a slight nod. The encrypted message from Earth Command contained just 3 words: "Tesseract Dawn successful." Morris suppressed a smile and raised his glass. "To new friendships and future discoveries, some of which might surprise you." "Surprises from humans." Ambassador Krell laughed openly now. "We have mapped your technological trajectory quite thoroughly. Your species won't achieve dimensional manipulation for at least 3 centuries, based on your current understanding of physics." "Perhaps," Morris said, sharing a knowing look with Grant. "But humans have always been unpredictable." The aliens continued their good-natured mockery throughout the evening, unaware that in an underground facility on Earth, humanity had just achieved what they believed impossible. The Galactic Confederation's laughter echoed through the ship, but it wouldn't last much longer. Deep beneath the Nevada desert, 100 feet below the sand and rock, Chief Engineer Olivia Rodriguez walked through the gleaming hallways of Project Tesseract Dawn. Unlike the sterile white corridors shown in movies, these passageways pulsed with blue light that seemed to bend around corners before they appeared. The walls themselves occasionally shimmered as if they weren't entirely solid. "The 7th-dimensional interface is stabilizing better than expected," Rodriguez explained to Defense Secretary William Parker, who followed her with an expression of both wonder and concern. We've managed to anchor our reality construct within the higher dimensional planes. Parker frowned, clearly struggling with the concepts. Explain it to me again, but without the physics lecture. The president needs to know if this is worth the $1 trillion we've poured into it. Rodriguez stopped at a massive window overlooking the testing chamber. In the center floated what appeared to be a small vessel, though its edges seemed to blur and shift as if it couldn't decide on its final shape. Imagine space as a piece of paper, she said. Three-dimensional beings like us can only move across the paper, forward, backward, side to side. But if you fold the paper, you can connect two distant points. She demonstrated with her hands. Fifth-dimensional travel, which the aliens use, is like folding the paper once. And seventh-dimensional? Parker asked. It's like crumpling the entire paper into a ball, where every point touches nearly every other point simultaneously. Her eyes lit up. We're not just folding space, we're reshaping its fundamental structure. The door slid open, and test pilot Ryan Chen entered. His face looked drawn, his eyes slightly unfocused. The now familiar look of someone who had experienced higher dimensional space. Another successful test jump, he reported, though his voice carried a hint of awe. I managed 14 microseconds in the 7th dimension before the anchor pulled me back. 14 microseconds. Parker scoffed. That doesn't sound impressive. Chen smiled faintly. In those 14 microseconds, I perceived every possible configuration of our solar system simultaneously. Past, present, multiple futures. He took a deep breath. And I felt others watching us. Parker looked alarmed. Aliens? Something older, Chen whispered. Much older. Rodriguez guided them toward the control room, where dozens of scientists monitored screens showing equations and energy patterns that seemed to bend and twist in impossible ways. The Confederation believes we're centuries away from this technology, she said. They've been monitoring our research, but we've been feeding them false data. When we activate the full-scale drive, they'll have no idea what's happening. Parker studied the prototype vessel again. And you're certain it's safe? The president won't authorize this if there's a risk of dimensional collapse or whatever sci-fi disaster you engineers fear. There's always risk with revolutionary technology, Rodriguez admitted. But our simulations show a 97% success probability. The remaining 3% isn't catastrophic failure, just the possibility of temporary dimensional displacement. A technician approached with a tablet. The energy signature masking is working perfectly, Dr. Rodriguez. The alien monitoring satellites are only detecting what appears to be standard fusion testing. Rodriguez nodded, satisfied. Schedule the first manned test of the full system for tomorrow. It's time to show the Horizon what it can really do. Parker's communicator buzzed with an encrypted message. Commander Morris reports increasing condescension from the Confederation delegates. They've begun offering us simplified technology they consider suitable for our development level. Rodriguez and Chen exchanged determined glances. Let them laugh, Chen said quietly. For now. On the main screen, the prototype's edges began to blur more dramatically as power flowed into its systems. For a brief moment, it seemed to exist in multiple places at once, an impossibility that would soon become humanity's greatest achievement. The Galactic Confederation's Grand Council chamber fell silent as Ambassador Krell stepped onto the raised platform. The curved walls displayed the stars of 17 different home systems, and representatives from each species sat in tiered seating arranged by their joining date. The human delegation, led by Commander Morris and Science Officer Grant, occupied the smallest area at the bottom level. In the spirit of cooperation and advancement, Krell announced, his forearms spread wide. The Confederation proposes a technology exhibition challenge. Each species will demonstrate their most advanced propulsion system in 3 standard cycles. Morris raised an eyebrow at Grant. This wasn't a friendly invitation. It was a thinly veiled opportunity to further establish the hierarchy, with humans firmly at the bottom. Earth accepts the challenge, Morris said, rising to his feet. The aliens around him murmured in surprise at the quick acceptance. When the transmission reached Earth, Defense Secretary Parker immediately called an emergency meeting. The Horizon project would need to be accelerated. In the selection chamber, military officials and scientists gathered to choose the crew for humanity's most advanced vessel. Captain Daniel Wilson, announced Parker, as a tall man with steady gray eyes stepped forward. 15 years of space experience, former test pilot, and one of the few humans who's successfully undergone 7th-Dimensional neural adaptation. Wilson nodded solemnly. I accept the command. Navigation Officer Samantha Lee, Parker continued. Lee, with her sharp features and focused expression, stood at attention. She's mapped the theoretical paths through higher dimensions and has an intuitive understanding of nonlinear space that our computers still can't match. Systems Engineer Eric Johnson, Parker gestured to a younger man with hands that never seemed to stop moving, designed half the Horizon's adaptive systems himself. Rodriguez stepped forward. The Horizon isn't complete. We've only tested the dimensional drive at 40% capacity. Then you'll finish it in orbit, Parker replied. The lunar base is preparing for your launch now. The Confederation has given us 3 days to prepare. The team boarded the unmarked shuttle that night. As it climbed through the atmosphere, Wilson studied the profiles of his crew. Every person aboard had been training for years, though most hadn't known the true nature of the project until recently. The aliens are watching, Johnson said, checking the sensor readings. 3 different monitoring satellites tracking our trajectory. Wilson smiled. Let them watch. They're expecting us to send our best conventional ship. The lunar base appeared on the horizon, but instead of approaching the main docking area, the shuttle veered toward what appeared to be a minor mining operation. As they neared, massive doors slid open in the lunar surface, revealing the hidden construction bay. Inside floated the Horizon. Unlike conventional starships, it had no definite shape. Its hull seemed to shift and flow, with sections occasionally becoming transparent or disappearing entirely. Strange geometries formed and dissolved along its surface. Beautiful, whispered Lee. It doesn't just travel through dimensions. It exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The crew transferred aboard, each taking their position in the unconventional bridge. Instead of chairs and consoles, they stood within spherical fields that connected them directly to the ship's systems. Final preparations complete, Johnson reported. Quantum entanglement network active. We can communicate instantly with Earth regardless of distance. Dimensional barrier stable, added Lee. 7th-dimensional corridor mapped and ready. Wilson took a deep breath. Begin undocking sequence. Let's show the galaxy what humans can do. As the Horizon rose from the lunar surface, observers from the Confederation noted what appeared to be a slightly unusual but still conventional vessel. Their instruments detected nothing remarkable, because they were calibrated to only recognize familiar dimensions. Little did they know that laughter was about to die in the throats of every advanced species in the galaxy. The Grand Exhibition Arena orbited an uninhabited gas giant in neutral territory. Massive viewing platforms housed delegates from every Confederation species, with smaller observation vessels dotting the space around them. The arena itself was a vast spherical field marked by sensor buoys that measured speed, energy output, and dimensional distortion. The Nuldarian vessel completes the course in 17 standard minutes, announced the neutral arbiter, a crystalline being whose transparent body contained swirling lights, utilizing 4th-dimensional slip technology. Polite applause followed as the furry Nuldarians guided their ship back to the docking area. Their achievement, crossing 10 light-years in minutes, would have seemed miraculous to humans just a decade earlier. Now it merely drew yawns from the more advanced species. The Vexeri delegation performed next, their sleek vessel folding space in a dazzling display that cut the record to 4 minutes. Ambassador Krell didn't bother hiding his smug expression as he glanced toward the human observation deck. Earth's vessel has not yet arrived, noted the arbiter. They have requested to be scheduled last. Perhaps they reconsidered embarrassing themselves. A reptilian delegate hissed, generating scattered laughter. Then alarms blared across all observation platforms. Security systems activated as sensors detected an unauthorized presence directly in the center of the arena. The horizon had arrived, without approaching through normal space. Impossible, Krell whispered, his forearms tensing. They can't have. Wilson's voice came through on all communication channels. The Earth vessel Horizon reporting for scheduled demonstration. Confusion spread through the alien delegations. Their tracking systems had detected no approach, no warning signs. The human ship had simply appeared. But even now, their sensors struggled to get clear readings. The Horizon's hull seemed to flicker and shift, parts of it occasionally fading from view entirely. "You have bypassed approach protocols," the Arbiter stated. "Explain your method of arrival." "We engaged our primary drive from Earth orbit," Wilson replied calmly. "We've been waiting here for approximately 3 hours, observing the demonstrations." "Ridiculous," Krell sputtered. "No vessel was present." "We were present." Lee's voice joined the channel. "Just not entirely in the same dimensional plane you were observing." The Arbiter consulted its instruments. "The course is prepared for Earth's demonstration." Wilson acknowledged and began the actual demonstration. What followed left even the oldest Confederation species speechless. The Horizon didn't just move, it fragmented. Multiple versions of the ship appeared simultaneously at different points along the course. Observers couldn't track it because it existed in multiple locations at once, its very nature defying conventional physics. Then, in a display that caused several sensitive instruments to overload, the Horizon activated its full 7th-Dimensional drive. The ship didn't just disappear. Reality itself seemed to bend around where it had been. For a brief moment, every being watching perceived multiple overlapping timelines, catching glimpses of their own past and future selves. When the effect faded, the Horizon floated peacefully at the starting position again. "Course completed," Wilson announced. Time elapsed, 1.3 seconds. Stunned silence filled every communication channel. The previous record of 4 minutes had been obliterated. The Arbiter's crystalline body had shifted from transparent to a deep blue, a sign of intense emotional disturbance among its kind. "This is..." The Arbiter struggled to find words. "The reading must be verified." "How did you accomplish this?" Krell demanded. All pretense of superiority vanished from his voice. "Human understanding of physics couldn't possibly." "Perhaps," Johnson cut in, "your understanding of humans was incomplete." Commander Morris and Science Officer Grant, watching from their observation deck, exchanged satisfied glances. Grant activated her secure channel to Earth. "Tesseract Dawn demonstration successful," she reported. As predicted, the laughter has stopped. On the viewing platforms, delegates huddled in urgent discussion. The galactic hierarchy had just been dramatically reshuffled, and humanity was no longer at the bottom. The reception aboard the Confederation's diplomatic vessel vibrated with tension. What had been planned as a celebration of technological exchange had transformed into an uneasy gathering. Captain Wilson stood with his small team, surrounded by alien diplomats whose attitudes had shifted dramatically from mockery to intense curiosity, and in some cases, poorly concealed fear. "Your dimensional drive," a Vexeri scientist pressed, hovering too close to Wilson. "The energy requirements must be impossible to sustain. What power source could possibly?" "We're not at liberty to discuss the specifics," Wilson replied evenly, taking a sip from his glass of blue liquid that tasted vaguely like mint. Across the room, Samantha Lee noticed a group of Volari delegates huddled in conversation. The Volari were newer members of the Confederation, reptilian beings with scales that shifted color with their emotions. Currently, they displayed mottled patterns of red and black, colors Lee had been briefed to recognize as aggression and secrecy. "Johnson," she murmured into her communicator, "keep an eye on the Volari group near the eastern viewport." The engineer acknowledged discreetly, positioning himself to monitor them while appearing to admire the gas giant visible through the massive window. Ambassador Krell approached Wilson, his silver eyes unreadable. "Captain, the Confederation Council requests a private tour of your vessel. As a gesture of goodwill." "I'm afraid that won't be possible at this time," Wilson replied. "The Horizon's systems are still stabilizing after the demonstration." What Wilson didn't mention was the real reason. Earth Command had explicitly forbidden any aliens aboard. The risk of technological theft was too great. Lee's communicator vibrated with an alert from the Horizon's automated security system. Something was attempting to breach their ship's outer dimensional barrier. A sophisticated scan piercing deeper than should be possible. She excused herself and stepped away from the gathering. "Control, we have unauthorized scanning activity," she reported to the Horizon's onboard eye. "Confirmed," came the response. "Scan origin traced to Volari diplomatic shuttle. Scan patterns suggest technology beyond their known capabilities." Lee rejoined Wilson and quietly updated him. His expression remained diplomatic, but his eyes hardened. "We need to return to the Horizon immediately," he said under his breath. As they moved to make their excuses to Krell, alarms blared throughout the diplomatic vessel. The lights flickered, and artificial gravity wavered momentarily. "Unknown energy surge detected near human vessel," announced an automated voice. Wilson's team rushed to the observation deck. Through the viewport, they could see the Horizon surrounded by a strange distortion field. Parts of the ship blinked in and out of existence as its dimensional anchors struggled to maintain stability. "They've used some kind of dimensional destabilizer," Johnson said, his hands flying over his portable console. "It's forcing the ship to phase between dimensions uncontrollably." On Earth, Rodriguez received the emergency signal. "The Horizon is under attack," she reported to the control room. "Dimensional flux readings are off the charts." Defense Secretary Parker leaned over the main console. "Can you stabilize it remotely?" "I'm trying, but the interference is like nothing we've seen before." Rodriguez's fingers moved across her controls with practiced precision. "The Volari shouldn't have this technology. Someone's helping them." Back on the diplomatic vessel, chaos erupted as accusations flew between delegations. The Volari representatives denied any involvement, their scales now pulsing with green, the color of deception. "If the 7th-Dimensional drive destabilizes completely," Lee warned Wilson, "it could create a cascade effect through multiple dimensions." Wilson made his decision. "Prepare emergency transport to the Horizon. We need to manually override the system." As the human team rushed toward the transport bay, the Horizon's distortion field grew more violent. The ship now appeared to be in multiple locations simultaneously, fragments of its structure scattered across space like a broken mirror. The cosmic laughter had stopped, but the real crisis was just beginning. The transport pod carrying Wilson, Lee, and Johnson streaked toward the distorting Horizon. Through the viewport, they watched their ship phase in and out of normal space, its structure seeming to exist in multiple places simultaneously. "The dimensional anchors are failing," Johnson said, his voice tight as he studied readings on his portable console. "We're seeing collapse across all dimensional barriers." Lee's eyes widened as she processed the sensor data. "This isn't just damage. The ship is evolving. The attack triggered some kind of emergency protocol we didn't know existed." The pod docked with what appeared to be the most solid manifestation of the Horizon. As they stepped aboard, reality itself seemed fluid around them. Corridors stretched impossibly long before snapping back to normal dimensions. Occasionally, they glimpsed alternate versions of themselves walking the same paths. "The engine core," Wilson ordered, leading them through the shifting maze. "We need to reach it before complete dimensional fracture." On Earth, Rodriguez watched the cascading data with growing amazement rather than fear. "The Horizon isn't failing," she reported to Parker. "It's advancing to the next stage, something we theorized but never expected to achieve so soon." "What does that mean?" Parker demanded. "The ship is breaking through to the 8th dimension and beyond," she whispered. "It's becoming something entirely new." The Horizon's engine room defied conventional understanding of space. As the crew entered, they found themselves standing not in a chamber, but seemingly among the stars themselves. The walls had disappeared, replaced by a view of the universe unlike anything human eyes had witnessed before. "The core has fully activated," Johnson said in awe. "It's not just bending space, it's revealing the underlying structure of reality." Wilson reached toward what should have been the control interface, but found his consciousness suddenly expanded. His mind connected not just with the ship but with a vast network of existence that stretched beyond comprehension. For a moment, he perceived the universe as a single, interconnected entity, past, present, and countless possible futures existing simultaneously. "Do you see them?" Lee asked, her voice distant despite standing nearby. "The Watchers." In the spaces between conventional dimensions, ancient presences observed. Not aliens as humans understood them, but entities that existed outside normal space-time. They had been there all along, watching the development of all intelligent life with patient curiosity. "They've been guiding us," Wilson realized. "All species. The dimensional technology, it wasn't just discovered, it was revealed to us when we were ready." The ship continued its transformation, now existing across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. Through the horizon's sensors, the crew could perceive the true nature of the galaxy, a complex tapestry of interconnected realities, rather than simply stars and planets in void. On the Confederation diplomatic vessel, the gathered species watched in shock as the horizon transformed. What had appeared as a distortion field now resembled a flowering structure of light and energy, branching across dimensions visible only as ghostly impressions to their limited senses. "The humans," Krell whispered. "What have they become?" Back aboard the horizon, Wilson made a decision. Rather than fighting the transformation, he initiated a full integration with the ship's evolving systems. "Take us deeper," he commanded. The horizon responded, its consciousness now partially merged with its crew. It slipped fully between dimensions, allowing them to perceive reality from entirely outside the normal universe. From this vantage point, they saw the truth. The Galactic Confederation was merely a tiny gathering in one corner of one dimension. Countless other realities existed alongside their own, some with civilizations far more advanced, others still forming their first primitive life. And connecting them all, bridges of energy and information that the Watchers had maintained for eons. "We've been playing in a tiny corner of the playground," Johnson said, his mind expanded beyond his physical form. "And now we can see the entire park." The horizon had not merely survived an attack. It had transcended. The Grand Council Chamber of the Galactic Confederation had been redesigned. Where once 17 species sat in hierarchical tiers, now all delegations occupied the same level in a perfect circle. At the center, a new pedestal had been constructed, one that humans now shared with the ancient Vexuri. 3 weeks had passed since the horizon's transformation. The vessel had returned to normal space, changed in ways that defied conventional analysis. Its hull now shimmered with patterns that seemed to move on their own, occasionally revealing glimpses of other realities beyond. Captain Wilson stood before the assembled delegates, his appearance subtly altered. Those who looked closely noticed his eyes now contained tiny points of light, like stars in miniature. When he moved, afterimages briefly remained, as if parts of him existed moments behind in time. "The diplomatic incident involving the dimensional attack has been resolved," Wilson announced. "The responsible faction has been identified, and the technology contained." What he didn't mention was that the containment had involved the horizon simply absorbing the dimensional destabilizer, incorporating its principles into its own evolving systems. Ambassador Krell, humbled by recent events, stepped forward. "The Confederation formally recognizes Earth as an equal partner in galactic affairs, with all privileges thereof." The statement, unthinkable just a month earlier, was met with unanimous agreement. The attack on the horizon had exposed not just the Volari splinter group, but corrupt elements throughout the Confederation who had been suppressing emerging species to maintain their technological advantages. Back on Earth, the Nevada facility had expanded. What had been Project Tesseract Dawn was now the Dimensional Sciences Academy. Engineers and scientists from around the world gathered to learn the principles that Rodriguez and her team were now freely sharing. The fundamental equations are actually quite elegant, Rodriguez explained to a lecture hall filled with eager minds. She gestured at formulas floating in holographic display. Once you understand that three-dimensional space is merely a projection of higher realities, the mathematics simplifies dramatically. Defense Secretary Parker, now with the new title of Dimensional Affairs Coordinator, watched from the back of the room. "I still don't understand half of what you're saying," he admitted with a smile. "But I'm glad you do." Rodriguez's eyes twinkled. The Confederation species have been studying these principles for centuries, yet somehow they missed the key insights. Human perspective brought something new to the equation. Stubbornness, most likely, Parker chuckled. On the edge of the solar system, the horizon orbited Neptune's moon Triton, now serving as both Earth's diplomatic vessel and a research platform. Some at the least stood in what had once been the navigation chamber, but now resembled a garden of light, with flowing energy patterns replacing traditional controls. "The 8th-dimensional corridor is stable," she reported to Eric Johnson, who monitored systems that were becoming more organic than mechanical. "We can begin bringing the first observation team through." The ship had become a gateway to realities beyond normal perception, a bridge between humanity and the higher dimensions where the Watchers resided. These ancient entities had begun direct communication, sharing knowledge that transformed human understanding of the universe. In the council chamber, Wilson concluded his address. "Humanity doesn't seek to dominate or control. We offer partnership. The dimensional technologies we've discovered belong to all sentient life." A Nuldarian delegate raised a furry hand. "But you achieved in decades what took us millennia. How can we possibly contribute equally?" Wilson smiled. "Each species perceives reality differently. The Vexeri see energy patterns we cannot. Your people understand biological adaptation in ways we're still learning. Together, we perceive more of the whole." As the meeting concluded, Wilson walked to the observation deck. The stars looked different to him now, not just points of light, but doorways to infinite possibilities. The laughter had indeed stopped, replaced by something far more valuable: respect and cooperation. Humanity had found its place in the cosmos not through conquest or competition, but by revealing a greater reality that united all intelligent life. The seventh dimension had been merely the beginning. What lay beyond promised to transform not just human destiny, but the future of all consciousness throughout the interconnected web of existence. The universe, in all its dimensional complexity, was just getting started.